All right, welcome back to WMAC Now with your host Chuck Stevenson, and welcome to episode number 105 of the WMAC Report, our regular show where we go over everything going on within the world of the women's divisions of mixed martial arts. Hope you like that intro music. I'm going to try to get it so that it'll actually play a little better. It's one of my favorite songs by one of my favorite bands. Converted it, transposed into orchestral music. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Got some good news coming in, or some bad news as well. Some good fight results from this past weekend. Some interesting fights coming up this weekend, and then we're going to talk about one championship and one's chosen ones, as I like to call them, the fighters that get a lot of favoritism. Like, you can always tell when a fighter is a promotional favorite, and one championship probably hides it the least of them. Anyway, let's get into the fight results. So first up, we're going to Miami, Florida for Combate Global, their one-night strawweight tournament, last Latina standing. First up in the quarterfinals, saw Yasmin Aragui defeated Stephanie Frausto via decision. Aragui kept her unbeaten record intact. Frausto fell to 8-8. Then in the second quarterfinals, Cressida Adames also stayed undefeated, defeating Yahaira Cunningham on the right there by unanimous decision. Like I said, Adames stayed undefeated. Cunningham fell to 3-3. Then in the third quarterfinal bout, Paulina Vargas defeated Claudia Diaz via split decision. Vargas climbed to 5-1. Diaz fell to 1-3. Man, I'll tell you what, Vargas had some sweet knockdowns in that bout. It was only one round because of the tournament format, but there were some sweet knockdowns. Then in the quarterfinal bout, was this the last one? This actually might have been the first fight. I can't remember. Claire Lopez on the right-hand side there defeated Claudia Cedillo via unanimous decision as well. Karen Cedillo via unanimous decision to move on to the quarterfinals. Lopez climbed to, I believe, 5-3. Cedillo fell to 4-3. Then we moved on to the... Nope. I don't actually have all the pictures moved up. So we're going to keep on going with the results anyway. Then in the semifinals, Yasmin Aragui defeated Cressida Adames via TKO at 3:14 of the first round. Just really poured on the volume there on Adames and forced the referee to stop it. Very nice stoppage there for Yasmin. Then in the other semifinal, Claire Lopez defeated Paulina Vargas via submission due to rear naked choke, 3 minutes and 43 seconds of the first round. Nice submission there by Lopez as well. Then in the final bout, Yasmin Aragui defeated Claire Lopez via TKO in the first round. Yasmin Aragui, man, she is a fighter to keep an eye on. She came into that tournament undefeated, and Yasmin Aragui stays undefeated. Came out of it tournament champion. Really nice performance by her. Definitely a young lady to keep an eye on. Then on, also on Friday night, Bellator's 264, Pam Sorensen defeated Roberta Pam Samad via split decision. Sorensen climbed to 9-3. Samad fell to 5-2. Not a bad fight overall. I was expecting a little bit better of a performance from Sorensen, but she hasn't fought in a while either, so can't be too harsh on her. But she got the win, and I believe she's now ranked in Bellator. So she did what she needed. She got done what she needed to do. All right, so that is it for the weekend results. So let's move into the news. First up, Bellator 266 goes down September 18th in San Jose, and it's going to feature a flyweight bout between Deanna Bennett and Alejandra Lara. Now, that was moved. It's supposed to take place next weekend, and it is instead going to go down on September 18th. So a little bit of a change up there. Then KSW 63 goes down September 4th from Warsaw, Poland. They added a bout between Sarah Luzar-Smajic coming in at 2-1, taking on Aitana Alvarez coming in at 1-0. So KSW keeping their ladies busy. Then Pancrase 324 goes down October 17th in Tokyo, Japan. They added a an interim flyweight title bout between Nori and Takeo Hashi. Talked a little bit about that one, Sunday night. Should be a good one. Nori doesn't have the cleanest of records, but she has been more active, whereas Hashi hasn't been as active lately. Then Nakao Cyborg Fights 10 goes down October 2nd in Brazil. That is the promotion that's actually owned by Chris Cyborg. They have an atomweight title bout between Aline Pires and Lily Fajeda. And then moving along, UAE Warriors 22 goes down September 4th in Abu Dhabi, I believe. And they are going to feature a flyweight bout between Corinne Laframboise and Ellen Auberg. Definitely keep an eye out on that bout. I've watched both of those ladies. They're definitely worth watching. Corinne Laframboise and Ellen Auberg. Then LFA 114 goes down next Friday on August 27th. Added a strawweight bout. Vanessa Little Monster Demopoulos coming in at 4-3, taking on Catherine Paprocki coming in at 3-1. Haven't seen Demopoulos in a while, so that'll be nice to see her back. And Paprocki, I believe she's definitely an underrated and underbooked strawweight on the regional scene. Then we had a change up to Invicta 44 on August 27th. Kelly D'Angelo is out of her bout with Jody Escobar due to injury. So Liz Titan Tracy comes in to replace her. So not a bad replacement considering it's short notice. And then the injury bug continues into the UFC as well. Both Sarah McMahon and Tracy Cortez are out of their respective bouts. McMahon out of her bantamweight bout against Ketlin Vieira, and Cortez out of her flyweight bout against JJ Aldrich on August 28th. So that goes down next Saturday. Both fighters are out due to unlisted injuries, and replacement bout opponents, if the ladies get them, are to be announced. And then final bit of news today, Bellator London goes down October 1st. Bellator returning to Europe, and they added a featherweight bout. Leah McCourt taking on Jessica Borga. So McCourt coming off the biggest win of her career over Janae Harding. Now she's taking on the previously ranked Jessica Borga. So that is it for the news for this weekend. So let's move into the rankings updates. So first up, Bellator has some changes in featherweights. Pam Sorensen was previously unranked. Now she's in at number 10 after her split decision win over Roberta Samad, which removes Jessica Borga out of the rankings. So I would probably put Pam a little bit higher, but there's also a few other fighters that I would put higher as well and move some of the fighters lower down on these rankings. Like I think Nogueira should be a little bit higher, definitely higher than Mealy and Harding. I would probably put Pam up higher than them as well. But the important thing is, Pam, the former Invicta champion, she's back, and she's got a win, and she's in the rankings now. And then this one, I haven't gone over these rankings before, but wanted to show you guys these. If you go to MMArising.com, and I'm going to enlarge this here, click on the rankings, and then you will find what are called the Unified Women's Mixed Martial Arts Rankings. Before the UFC and Bellator started doing their own rankings, these were like the go-to women's rankings because they were like the chief rankings that have, that mix the ladies from the different divisions and rank them against each other. So these are definitely worth checking out. They update about once a month, so these are current as of August 1st. But they have atom weight, 105 pounds. Super atom weight for the Ryzen for 108 pounds. Then, of course, straw weight, which, let's be honest here, all the straw weights are UFC at this point. I can't think of any straw weight outside the UFC that's worth ranking. Of course, the flyweights. Flyweights are when you get into some mixing. Because you got Valentina Shevchenko at 1, Juliana Velasquez, the Bellator champ, at number 2. Ilima-Lei Macfarlane, the former Bellator champ, at number 3. I would not have her as high as number 3. I would definitely have Liz Carmouche there above Ilima-Lei. Because let's be honest, Liz Carmouche has wins over, I think, everybody in the top 5 in the UFC right now outside of Valentina. Jessica Andrade, I would probably have lower, or I would have higher than Ilima-Lei. Caitlin Chukagian, she's all right there at number 5. Same for Lauren Murphy. Well, I'd put them both a little higher. Vanessa Porto at number 8, the former Invicta champ. On this list, it's hard to justify her in the top 10 right now because, she's 1-1 in her last 2, I'll admit. Jennifer Maia, I would have higher. And then Joanne JoJo Calderwood's there as well. Then you move up to bantamweights, and no surprise, they're all in the UFC. And then the featherweight division has some mixed ones as well. So you got Amanda Nunes, Cyborg, Julia Budd, Norma Dumont there at number 4. I wouldn't put Dumont that high. I would definitely have Arlene Blenko over Anderson and probably Spencer as well. Definitely over Norma Dumont. I mean, Arlene Blenko's only losses recently are to Cyborg and Julia Budd. Janae Harding, I wouldn't have on there at all, just because the UFC fighters would move her off of the list in comparison to the Bellator list. Leslie Smith, I had to have a hard time ranking her as well. And then Caitlin Young, she's not even fighting at featherweight right now. She's at lightweight in PFL. So, do I agree with all of these rankings? Obviously not. But I think that they're interesting to look at because, like I said, they're one of the only ones out there. I mean, you can go to I think Fight Matrix too. But like I said, before UFC and Bellator did their own, proprietary rankings, these were the go-to rankings for a while. So, hadn't covered them before, but I'm going to start doing it, once a month when they update. So, definitely check them out. MMArising.com/ranking/Unified Women's Mixed Martial Arts Rankings. Or just go to MMArising.com and click on rankings there. They're easy enough to find. All right, so now we're going to keep things moving along here, moving into the weekend preview. So, no, that's not what I wanted. So first up, we have PFL, and there were some last-minute changes to PFL. Larissa Pacheco weighed in 5 pounds heavy, so she is now out of the PFL playoffs. So big shakeup in the PFL playoffs already. But they have some other fights going on as well. And we got 5 people in here. The chat is open if you want to go check that, if you want to have anything you want to say. Also, please don't forget to hit that like button and get that algorithm going for us. But first up, we have Miranda Barber coming in at 1-1, taking on Amanda Levy, making her pro debut. No stats, other stats available for Levy on Tapology. Miranda Barber is listed at 27 years old. She is 5 feet 7, 170 centimeters tall. She's coming off a loss to Laura Sanchez a year and 6 months ago. Laura Sanchez, I believe that's the same Laura Sanchez that fought in PFL this season. Let me check. Yeah, so she lost to Laura Sanchez, who just fought in this PFL season. So I'll be honest, I don't know either of these ladies, so I don't feel comfortable making a pick on this one. Moving along, still in the lightweight division, we have Caitlin, the Striking Viking Young, taking on Marina Maknatkina. Maknatkina making her PFL debut. Previously was fighting at featherweight in Bellator. The Striking Viking, Caitlin Young, coming in at 12, 11, and 1. Maknatkina coming in at 5 and 2. Now, Young is coming off a loss to Mariana Moraes via split decision a little over a month ago. Maknatkina coming off a win about a month and a half ago over Amanda Bell. And then right after that fight, asked for her release from Bellator and got it, and then ran and signed to PFL. It was surprising news when it happened. Anyway, keeping on with the stats, Young is 2 years the elder, 35 to Maknatkina's 33. She's the taller fighter at 5'9", 176 centimeters to Maknatkina's 5'6", 168 centimeters. And Young has the reach advantage as well, 69-inch, 175 centimeters to Maknatkina's 65.5 inches, 166 centimeters. So I favor Young in this fight. She definitely has more experience, definitely the better fighter in the stand-up. Now, Maknatkina, I give a slight advantage to on the ground. I feel like the longer this fight goes, the better it is for Caitlin Young. Whereas with Maknatkina, she's only been to decision, I think, once. And that was against Amanda Bell. Mostly finishes her fights inside the distance. So the longer I feel that this fight goes on, the more confident I feel in Caitlin Young to win it. And that's who is going to be my pick, Caitlin Young. Most likely by decision. Continuing, we move up onto the main card. In the playoffs, we have Taylor Guardado taking on Mariana Moraes. Now, Moraes was supposed to face Claudia Zamora. However, because of Larissa Pacheco falling out due to missed weight, Moraes steps into the playoffs against Taylor Guardado. No Mercy Guardado coming in at 2-1. Moraes coming in at 17-11. Both ladies are coming in off of a win. Guardado over Laura Sanchez just under 2 months ago. Moraes coming over the split decision win over Caitlin Young. At that same event. Guardado is the taller fighter, 5'6", 168 centimeters to Moraes' 5'4", 163 centimeters. Guardado has a reach advantage as well, 69-inch, 175 centimeters to Moraes' 66-inch, 168 centimeters. So this is an interesting fight. Moraes, just haven't seen enough of her to really judge her. Guardado, to me, I still look at her and I see a mostly one-dimensional wrestler. So if she gets Moraes down, that's probably it for Moraes. If it stays on the feet, you could probably more likely favor Moraes. But, I mean, Guardado has gotten almost every opponent she's faced down to the ground at one point or another. So I got to go with Taylor Guardado to win this one and move on to the finals against the winner of the next bout, Kayla Harrison and Jenna Fabian. current PFL season champ, Harrison, coming in at 10-0. Fabioso, Jenna Fabian, coming in at 4-1. Now, Harrison, of course, obviously undefeated. Last fought a month and a half ago, defeating Cindy Dandwa via armbar. Jenna Fabian fought on that same card, defeating Julia Payek via TKO with a hook to ground and pound. Now, they are the same age, 31 years old. Big difference in height here. 6 foot, 183 centimeters for Jenna Fabian to 5'8", 173 centimeters for Kayla Harrison. So 4 inches, 10 centimeters height advantage for Fabian. Almost, honestly, the reach is even bigger difference. 74 inches, 188 centimeters to 66 inches, 168 centimeters for Kayla Harrison. So this, honestly, I feel like this is an uphill battle for Jenna Fabian. Fabian has to keep Harrison at the edge of her range. And I mean, she has to keep her on the straight, like farthest edge of her reach. She's got to start working that jab against Kayla Harrison. She does not want to let Kayla Harrison within range, because if Harrison gets range, she's going to get the clinch. She gets the clinch, she's going to get the takedown. And Fabian does not, I repeat, does not have the ground game to keep up with Kayla. She just doesn't. Does she have the striking to beat Kayla? Yes. If she fights smart, if she keeps Kayla on the outside, Jenna Fabian can beat her. Do I see that possibility happening? No, not really. I don't see this happening at all. So just don't see it happening. So I'm going to go with Kayla Harrison to win this one, to take on Taylor Guardado in the finals, which happen in, I believe, in October. So then final fight we're going to talk about for this coming weekend, UFC Fight Night, Cannonier versus Gastelum. Has one ladies bout at, I believe, bantamweight. Bea Malecki taking on Josiane Nunes. Bad news, Barbie. Bea coming in at 2-0. Last fought defeating Veronica Macedo a year and a half ago. Man, can't believe it's been that long. Nunes coming off a win 8 months ago outside of the UFC. She actually hasn't fought for the UFC yet. Her last bout was scrapped due to her opponent missing weight. Let's see. Malecki is the older fighter, 29-27 for Nunes. Okay. This height difference is absolutely redonkulous. Malecki coming in at 5'9", 175 centimeters to Nunes' 5'2", 157 centimeters. That is a 7-inch height advantage, y'all. That is insane. That is just nuts. Now, no reach listed for Nunes. Malecki is listed at 74 inches, 188 centimeters. So her reach is 13 full centimeters longer than she is tall. That is just ridiculous. Malecki is just way too tall and long. As for who wins this fight, I just don't know. I haven't seen a whole lot of Nunes. Whereas Malecki is just, she's so green. She's only 2-0. But that's size difference. That could really play a factor in this fight. So it's very hard to pick against Malecki, but I don't have enough faith in Malecki to beat someone that much more experienced than her either. So I just don't know on this one. So I'm not going to make a pick. So just a friendly reminder, the chat is open right now. So if you want to make a comment, feel free to. So that is it for the weekend preview. So we're going to move on into our discussion topic here. Chosen ones. So I wanted to talk about some favoritism that goes on. Now, every promoter, every fight promotion, whether, it's one, UFC, Bellator, Top Rank Boxing, uh, Matchroom, they all have their favorites. No matter what promotion you look at, they're all going to have their favorites. But to me, one championships are just a little bit, like overboard with how much they favor certain fighters, and they honestly they don't even try to hide it. Like they might occasionally make some lame duck excuse for the fighters they favor, but they certainly don't hide it. I mean, definitely not. So let's get started. So depending on how long you've been following one championship, you may or may not recognize this first fighter I'm mentioning. It's Ann Osman. So Osman was like the first female star of one championship, or at least they wanted her to be the first female star of one championship. But she just wasn't able to, win the important fights that they wanted her to. But that didn't mean they didn't try. They kept trying to give her, winnable fight after winnable fight. And her career just didn't pan out the way that she in one championship wanted it to. But here's how much they liked her. Okay, she's from a Malaysian fighter, so right over the border from Singapore, shares that island, and one championship used to go to Kuala Lumpur a lot more than they have the last few years. So she was like really big for them in the Malaysian market at the time, and they favored her so much that when she retired. She got married, had a kid, I believe. They gave her an office job at one championship. She was like part of the female talent scouting, I believe, if I remember right. Now, I'm not sure if she still has that job, but she definitely had it for a while. It just shows, like how much one championship, appreciated her and favored her. That they kept trying to give her, those winnable fights because they wanted her to be like their first homegrown star. Like even when she kept losing like the important fights, they kept doing it. So, but she was definitely the first. Then we move on to the queen of one championship in Angela Lee. Angela Lee has gotten more promotion from one championship than a lot of the men champions. I mean, they have like gone overboard, over the top for this young lady, like time and time again. I mean, her first fight in one championship, you pull up her record, and you pull it up here real quick. So Angela made her debut in one. She was already. Oh, she made her pro debut in one, and she fought a young lady from Egypt top team. Listen, you're fighting a lady from Egypt top team, or you're fighting any fighter from Egypt top team. Guess what? One championship expects you to win that fight. Egypt top team. Nothing against those folks. They just weren't very good. And they aren't. So right away she was being favored. And then she kept getting winnable fight after winnable fight. Mostly she was winning her fights on the ground because she was winning by armbar, rear naked choke, twister. A lot of the fighters she was fighting were strikers without really much of a ground game. All the way up until she fought Mei Yamaguchi. And even then, a lot of people thought she was being favored because Angela is a lot bigger than Mei Yamaguchi. Big height difference, just all around beefier. A lot of people thought, well, they're finally giving her a step up in competition, but it's against a smaller opponent. Then they put her up against the previously undefeated Jenny Huang, and you knew going in right away. Juan was undefeated at the time, and she was coming in off of that Go-Go Plata submission. But anybody that watched the two fighters knew that Angela was going to kill Jenny Juan, and she did. Then, of course, you had the whole. They tried to make her a champ. They pushed her against Seong Jin Nan, and that didn't work out. Most promotions would say, okay, you tried your hand at getting the title in the division up, so now you got to go back and defend your belt. Did one do that to her? No, they gave her another fight up there at 125, and she lost it. So they finally made her move back down, and she fought Seong Jin Nan again. This time, they convinced Seong to move back down to 115 pounds. And I don't care what one championship says. The suplex that Angela landed on Seong was definitely illegal. She definitely hit her head first. And then from there, she got the submission. Now, since then, Angela has not fought. So she has defended her title one time since May of 2018. So she last fought in October of 2019. So you're coming up on 2 years since she last fought. Has only defended her title one time in 3 years. Yeah, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, 3 years, one title defense. And they haven't even, and when asked, they said, oh, we're not going to do an interim title, that's not fair to Angela. We're not going to strip her, even though she's been inactive. Granted, okay, she's pregnant, or she had a baby. She already had the baby. But still, you could have done an interim championship. But they didn't do that. Instead, they did the Grand Prix, which, granted, I like the Grand Prix, but the fact is you had a number one contender that you could have put in for an interim championship already. Instead, they said, no, we're not going to do that to Angela. It's not fair to her. Blah, 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 blah. So, a champion that has defended her title one time in the last 3 years. The favoritism is ridiculous. Now, before I move on, I do want to make sure that I make it clear. I am not attacking the fighters. My intention here is not to attack the fighters. My intention here is to point out blatant promotional favoritism. Let's check out some comments here. Ivan, I believe you're new, so welcome to the WMMA scene. It says, one is astroturfing, paying for engagement through the usage of spoof accounts to make it feel the engagement is organic from an authentic, non-affiliated person. Yeah, there have definitely been a lot of accusations about them doing that through their social media, particularly their YouTube channel, which has just a ton of views. Like every video they put up on YouTube gets a ton of views, but very little like actual fan interaction in the form of like comments or likes or dislikes. So they've definitely been accused of that before. Purple Donatello, I believe I've seen you once before, but if I haven't, welcome to the scene. And if you have been around before, welcome back. Says, Miss Jenny Juan, when is she coming back? Don't know. She's on a 5-fight losing streak right now, so we'll have to find out. Though a lot of people thought she had actually beaten Mei Yamaguchi in their rematch in Japan, so I hope she's somewhere improving and getting better as a fighter, because I have seen some improvement from her in the last several fights, even in the losses. So Judy D says Victoria Lee is being hyped due to her family. Well, speak of the devil. Not that she's a devil, it's just a phrase. Victoria Lee. Holy crap. Has any young fighter, is any young debutante gotten as much push as this young lady did before her pro debut? She hadn't even had her first fight yet, and they were comparing her to the likes of a teenaged LeBron James or Naomi Osaka or a number of other, very successful young athletes. It was it was just ridiculous. And of course, we all know why. It's because she's elite. Her sister is a champ. Her brother's a champ. They have their hometown Singapore fighters, even though they were born and raised in Hawaii. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. She seems to be a very talented young lady, and they already booked. Oh yeah, here's another thing. They already booked her for her third fight this year. When one championship has a number of fighters, like a score of fighters that haven't even fought in 2020. Yet she has made her pro debut, got a second fight, and is about to fight again next month. And you've got fighters on the sidelines that you haven't even booked for a fight this year. I mean, come on. That's just a blatant favoritism there. But like I said, I think she's very talented. She seems to be very talented. Of course, obviously, she's being given extremely winnable fights against fighters whose records look good on paper, like because they're like 3-2, or they were more experienced than her, and her next fighter opponent is undefeated at 5-0. But then you look at her opponent, and it's none of that girl's wins have come against anybody with any wins themselves. So it's like, again with this, a fighter whose record looks good but isn't necessarily any good herself. So yeah, I think the hype behind Victoria has just gotten, beyond the pale at this point. Equationist, welcome to the scene, says, I think part of their favoritism just has to do with hyping up people who are likely to have high potential. Yes, but it's not just about high potential as far as fighting. It's about high income potential as well. Like they are hyping up fighters who appeal to certain markets more than anything else. And that's every promotion does it. It's just that one championship does it. Like it goes beyond ridiculous with them. And making sure to cultivate them with selected fights. Yes, I agree. Moving along, we have Stamp Fairtex. So Stamp got signed off of the One Warrior Series. Never fought MMA before, but fought an MMA bout in One Warrior Series. Gets signed to one championship. But is her debut fight for them in MMA? No, it's kickboxing. They give her an immediate title fight against their then kickboxing champion, whose name escapes me right now. Let me look it up here real quick. She defeated, it doesn't even have it here. It's not important. So anyway, she gets an immediate title shot against their kickboxing champion and gets away with like crazy clinching and dumping in kickboxing. You're not supposed to allow extended clinching in kickboxing, and dumping should be penalized as well. But they let her get away with it again and again and again. Of course, she won the fight, became the kickboxing champ. So what do they do for her next fight? Well, they create the one atomweight Muay Thai championship, and they book her against Janet Todd. So her first two fights in one championship are championship fights. Beyond ridiculous. So Stamp definitely has been one of one championship's chosen ones. Anything else with her? Actually, her Muay Thai or MMA opponents, I can't really complain about. Sinisa Sreeson, that one was a bit weak. But for the most part, her MMA opponents have been, not bad at all. Pooja Tomar is a bit weak. B. Nguyen was definitely undersized, but definitely had more experience than her. So, and then finally, Ritu Phogat. One championship's doorway into the Indian market. And that's why Ritu Phogat is getting favored. Okay. She comes from a famous family in India, and she is by far the most successful Indian fighter so far in one championship. Not counting Arjun Bhullar because he's actually from Canada. Ritu Phogat made her pro debut for one championship in 2019. Now, since then, across 2020 and 2021, she has racked up a 5-1 record. She fought three times for one championship in 2020 and already twice for them in 2021. That's more than, I think, probably any other fighter for one championship in the last year and a half, or a little over a year and a half since the pandemic hit. She has fought for them repeatedly. And again, like Equation has said, they cultivate them with selected fights. You look at Ritu's first 3 opponents, they gave her a fellow debutante, which isn't bad. I don't blame her for that. Then Wu Chao Chen, and then Nusre Po. Her first 3 opponents were strikers who couldn't stop a takedown. Ritu is a wrestler, so they gave her fighters that they knew she'd be able to take down and beat, and she did. Jo Marie Torres was an experienced fighter, but you look at Jo Marie Torres' record, she was riding a 4-fight losing streak going into that bout. I mean, come on. That's a bit ridiculous. Matching up your so far undefeated fighter against someone on a 4-fight losing streak and hadn't shown any sign of, getting one back into the win column before that. So then they decide to enter her into the Atomweight World Grand Prix. Well, before that starts, because that was supposed to start in May, before that starts, they book her for a fight in April. It was supposed to be a stay busy fight against B. Nguyen at the one Dangle card. Now, of course, it was called Dangle because it was mostly featuring Indian fighters, but also Ritu's family is what the big, huge Bollywood movie Dangle is based on. It's based on her dad and her 2 older sisters. So, of course, they put her on that card. And they put her up against someone who had a losing record at the time in B. Nguyen. Now, of course, that ended up coming to bite them in the butt because Ritu lost. So she was out of the tournament. So what do? They find a way to somehow argue to get her back into the tournament. They book her against Hei Jin Lin. Now, Hei Jin Lin had a really nice winning streak going into the fight. But, and there's some buts here, Hei Jin Lin hadn't fought in over 2 years. She hadn't fought since March of 2019. So 2 years and March, April, May, June, July. 4 months. So almost 2.5 years since her last fight. Comes back in to fight Ritu Phogat, who had fought all of her fights in a year and a half. So all of Ritu's fights had come in the time that Lin Hei Jin hadn't even been fighting. And then you also look at most of Lin Hei Jin's record. It's not very pretty. Who she's fought. It's just not pretty. And they use that excuse to say, oh, well, she beat a fighter who was on a big winning streak. So she gets back in the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, they had already replaced her twice in the Grand Prix. First with Julia Meza Barba, and then with Grace Cleveland. But now neither of those fighters are in the Grand Prix. They're relegated to alternate bouts because we got to get our Indian star back in there, our potential Indian draw. It's like when they use the excuse of, oh, she beat Lin Hei Jin, it's like, you know what, why don't you just come out, be honest, and say, we put her back in because we wanted her back in. I would appreciate the honesty a lot more because everyone knew that's what they were doing. It's just like, why are you making up excuses to put her back in when we knew you wanted her in there in the first place? Or Why did you even say if she lost a fight to B that she'd be out of the tournament? Because you knew you were going to find a way. Well, okay. They did not plan on her losing to B Nguyen. They gave her a fighter with a losing record, expecting her to beat a far more experienced fighter who had, a bit of a fan base going in B. They didn't expect her to win. It was a tune-up fight. It was a stay busy fight for Ritu to, pad her record just a little bit more before the Grand Prix. So they did not expect her to lose to B at all. But B came in and said, I'm nobody's stepping stone. I'm not here to be your record padding. And she beat him. So as soon as that happened, one championship was scrambling. We got to get her back into the Grand Prix. We got to get her back in the Grand Prix. I mean, it was super obvious that they booked her immediately against a fighter who hadn't fought in a while. So out of all the fighters on this list, Ritu has probably been getting more favoritism lately than anyone, just because of her activity level. So the brother man just came in and says, "What's up?" And then Zazakita, I ain't seen you in a while either. What's up, Zazakita? So welcome. So, I didn't want to go too deep into this. I just wanted to show, how obvious sometimes that promotions, in this case, one championship, make it that they are favoring certain fighters. So one championship definitely, they don't really even try to hide it very much. Zazakita says, Victoria Lee is a child. I hope she gets favorable matchup. I don't need her to get beat down when she's 16. Here's the thing, though. She's like far from the only 16-year-old teenager to fight MMA. And you know what? Most other teenagers have debuted in MMA have fought tougher competition than Victoria has been fighting. And most of them didn't even have Victoria's extensive, background, like state wrestling champion and other like amateur background that she has. So, I mean, she's being like given super favorable matchups compared to like she's actually had it way easier than a lot of other teenage fighters. And I've pointed some out. Karen, formerly Karen Date, just beat a fighter who was like on a losing streak herself, but like way more experienced than her. And I'm talking like serious experience too. So Karen Date's 3-0 now. She just beat Ayumi Saito. Ayumi Saito was 8-7 at the time. Now, granted, that's not the prettiest of record, but that experience factor. Karen Date is actually fighting tougher competition right now than Victoria Lee is, with nowhere near the amount of push and big fanfare that Victoria Lee has gotten. When Victoria made her pro debut, even Ariel Helwani was like, wow, she's only 16, dude. It's like, dude, I've seen plenty of 16-year-old fighters. I've seen 15-year-old fighters make their debut. Zazakita says her next opponent is 5-0, which is acceptable third opponent for a 16-year-old with only 2 fights. Yeah, but okay, you might have missed this. You look at her opponent's record. And they're giving her a girl who is 5-0. But here's the thing. She is along the same lines of her previous 2 opponents. Okay. Her opponent is Victoria Souza. Let's look at her 5 opponents. Debutante, 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 debutante. So while the record looks nicer than Victoria's previous 2 opponents, it's probably actually in actuality a weaker opponent. So they're giving her these fighters that have these nice looking records, but they're not actually necessarily any good. Like, they're totally padding her record up right now, which I don't have a problem with building up a fighter, but her competition is not matching the level of hype that she's being given. Okay, obviously her opponent is not great, but she's supposed to be an opponent with more experience. 5/2, but not a world beater. Yeah, but again, eventually the level of competition has to match the level of hype. And the level of hype that she's getting is up here, or up here rather, whereas her level of competition is actually down here. So they got to give her some better competition at some point. And again, I'm not knocking Victoria Lee. She's going out there and she's doing her job. But like I said, the favoritism and the level of hype behind her is beyond the pale, honestly. Hype is created a lot by fans. Yes, but the fans weren't the ones comparing her to LeBron James or Naomi Osaka or Tiger Woods. You know, people who were like actually had real accomplishments at the same age or better. Who should she fight if you had a choice? Let's see. Somebody on the actual One Championship roster at this point. I mean, again, I'm not a matchmaker, but I'm just saying the level of competition needs to match the level of hype at some point, or else people are going to look at this and go, okay, here we go. She's fighting another can. Otherwise, you get the reputation of being a can crusher. And that haunts you for pretty much your entire career. Once a can crusher, you're almost always known as a can crusher. You do not want that can crusher reputation. Yeah, the Brotherman says the Lee sisters are pretty spoiled to one. Yeah, definitely. Christian is as well to some extent, but man, Christian, it's hard to deny that his accomplishments at this point. So anyway, that's really all I have for this live stream for this week. Normally, I do the show on Thursday, but because of PFL tomorrow night, I wanted to do it tonight instead. So, anyway, thank you all to all who tuned in. What is this doing? Okay. Thank you to all who tuned in. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button to get the algorithm going. And says Akita, maybe Ritu versus Victoria Lee when Ritu loses to Mumbo. That'd be a really good fight. Like, honestly, Ritu and Victoria are like the type of opponents that should be fighting each other. Or Victoria at this point, with one more win against the likes of, say, Itsuki Hirata, if Hirata doesn't do good in the Grand Prix. Like, because they're all around that same experience level. And they're all, fairly young, too, so. But, yeah. So that's all I have. If you're watching on playback, please leave a comment or let me know your thoughts in the comments. And thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to WMMA Now, the most complete women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Oh, before I go, I have an interview. I just interviewed strawweight fighter Emily King. That will be premiering tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So 8 o'clock my time on the East Coast of the U.S. So keep an eye out for that. It will be premiering. You'll be able to chat with it. I'll be there in the chat as well. Feel like it's going to come off really well. I thought I had some good questions, and she has some really good answers as well. The equation says it does feel like they need to start pairing a lot more favorites against each other now that they've created so many. I agree. And here's the thing. All these favorites, they're in the same division. They can't. Now, granted, with the Grand Prix, you have like Itsuki and Ritu in. If those two fight each other, if the brackets work out the way that they seem like they're going to work out, Ritu and Itsuki are in the same bracket. So Itsuki's been a little bit favored, not nearly as much as the others, though. But if those two both win their next fights and the brackets continue the way that it looks like they will, then those two are going to face each other. So that'd be fun. Victoria versus Ritu. Ritu wins, says Judy V. Yeah, I would probably favor Ritu, honestly. I think her wrestling's a lot stronger. And Victoria is a little bit sloppy. Like, she's way more aggressive than her sister was when her sister was at that same experience level. And I think that aggressiveness is going to cost her at some point. So anyway, like I said, keep an eye out for the Emily Keene interview tomorrow night. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.